Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is to take part in indirect talks with US officials in Geneva. The second round of talks will be held on Tuesday. They're going to be mediated by Oman. Araghchi will also meet the head of the UN's nuclear agency, as well as the Swiss foreign minister. And the first round of indirect talks took place in Oman last week. Similar talks last year broke down after Israel launched airstrikes on Iran. Iran and the US have restarted negotiations earlier this month, and they centre on a dispute which has lasted for decades over Tehran's nuclear program, but also an attempt to avert a new military confrontation. Tohid Asadi is joining us live now from the Iranian capital, Tehran. The first round of talks that we saw in Oman were essentially just an effort to try and set up the guidelines to get a sense of how determined either side was to make this work. Do we have any idea what they're going to be talking about in this next round?
Well, at some point we can say that even the second round of talks could be interpreted as a sort of test to make sure that both sides are determined sufficiently to go through the trajectory of diplomacy to settle down the issues in between. But speaking of the agenda of these talks, we've got the Deputy Foreign Minister of the country, Majid Takhravanchi, coming out to say that they want the talks to be concentrated upon the nuclear dossier of the country, and on that there are controversial issues remaining. For instance, the Iranian side is saying that it's not going to accept any possibility for zero enrichment and it's going to continue its nuclear program. And it says it's going to be peaceful when it comes to its nature, but still there are other controversial issues, specifically when it comes to the topical domain of these talks. The American side, according to what we hear from Washington, is trying to, in a sense, expand the scope of these talks to include other controversial issues such as Iran's ballistic missiles and regional relations, as well as defense capabilities. But the Iranian side says, first, it wants to untangle the knots one by one, and then secondly, it says, according to what we hear from the Deputy Foreign Minister, that some issues such as the defense capabilities are going to be off the table for any sort of negotiation. Now, and in that regard, we see also a two-sided statement from Iranian officials saying that they are ready for both scenarios of diplomatic engagement on the one hand and confrontational scenarios on the other.
Tohid, we've got to remember, of course, it was only a few weeks ago we were reporting on the protests that were on the streets of Iran. They were driven predominantly by the economic situation within Iran, sanctions, of course, contributing to the shaky economy in the country at the moment. How is the government, if you like, framing these negotiations that are going to be happening in Geneva, have been happening in Oman, to the people of Iran?
Well, when it comes to the trajectory of talks, I can say that there is this sort of frustration and uncertainty among the people about the possibility and the extent to which this engagement could pave the way for improvement when it comes to daily lives and when it comes to economic situation. And as you said, Iranians are facing a deteriorated economy, and the government is trying to say that these trajectory of talks could pave the way for the sanctions to be removed, and that means it's going to put a tangible impact on the daily lives of people. But still, that frustration is still out there because people are not sure, seeing the experience of the talks for over the past, I would say now decades, that the country is engaged in talks, but people are not really sure whether the translation of these talks is going to be something when it comes to their pockets. And also, besides that economic pressure that they are facing, there is this shadow of the war that they are also confronting with respect of this recent statements from the US president and recent military buildup in the region that runs the risk of further escalation, and that's something that people are not really interested in.
Tohid Asadi in Tehran there. Thank you very much indeed, Tohid.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.